Look, I'm unstoppable. Forget your defense, nothing but an obstacle. Run it back, switch it up, call it audible. Serving up them Hail Marys till the game over with the showstopper. So hot, you gotta blow on it. I said I'll huff and I'll puff, then I'll pass to my left while I'm looking to my right. Hit him right in the chest. It be looking like magic. Better give me the throne. I ain't talking about Patrick, but I rep my home. I'm never at the end of my zone. I'm bad to the bone, eating up these pigs.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Texans Fan Battle Podcast. Tonight we have a special guest for you, but before I introduce him, I'm your co-host, Matthew Briggs, and as always, my A1 since day one, Mr. Crenshaw. Say what's up to the folks.
How y'all doing out there?
And guys, our special guest, if you listen to 610 in the morning with Seth Payne, then you know his bunny outtakes. Really good with the Texans, the voice of the Texans. I got Mr. Sam Pendergast. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. How you guys doing?
Good.
Fantastic. Ready for this draft, man. I'm excited. Every time I think of the draft, I think of draft day and that story that you told me about Kevin Costner pinching her nipple. Is this? It gets me every time, man.
Yeah, me too. Every time I can't watch Yellowstone now without thinking, everybody thinks that Beth Dutton is the one that's horny all the time, but it's actually John Dutton in his real persona of Kevin Costner, who's the horniest one. Yeah.
That's great. Before we kind of kick it off, I know you're a big wrestling fan. WrestleMania just happened. Did you check it out?
All 50 jillion hours of it both nights. Absolutely. It was a good one.
So, you liked it, huh? So
I did.
Out of Pat McAfee, Logan Paul, and Steve-O, who did the best?
You mean Johnny Knoxville?
Johnny Knoxville, yeah.
Yeah. Steve-O would have been amazing, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, Steve-O would have done some stuff. I interviewed Steve-O one time. He came into my studio at my old station. I'm going to answer your question, but a real quick Steve-O story.
Go ahead.
At my old station that I was at before I was at 610, I was doing mornings there, and Steve-O was in town to do his comedy act at the Improv, and he was late to come into studio to do, anybody's at the Improv comes in studio and they try to sell tickets to their show. Steve-O comes racing in the middle of a segment, sits down, grabs the mic, and immediately just starts telling stories. So, he interrupts me and Granado. He's like, yeah, so one time I was in a bathroom and I was with Mike Tyson and we're doing an 8-ball of Coke and Mike took his pants off and we were in the middle of talking about the Astros or something, and Steve-O comes racing into the studio. I think he was on an 8-ball of Coke at that time. So anyways, to answer your question, I thought they all did, they were all very different, but I thought they all did great. I thought the Sami Zayn, Johnny Knoxville match entertained me way more than it had any business entertaining me. And then inserting all the Jackass guys into it actually added to it. It didn't make it into a total just eye roller. It was really good. I thought Logan Paul was really solid in what he did. And Pat McAfee was the surprise of the night to me. Pat McAfee was excellent, I thought. Yeah, for what he is, he's not.
I thought he lost the commentary job.
When he jumped up from the mat up to the top rope to do the super, in one jump up to the top rope to do the superplex, I'm going, man. I mean, it shouldn't be a surprise. He's a former professional athlete, but he's a punter. It's not like he was he's a professional athlete with an asterisk next to it.
Right.
So
right.
I was entertained the whole weekend. I was pleasantly surprised, and I thought all the celebrities did a really, really good job.
Again, before we move on. Did you catch what Pat McAfee said about WrestleMania?
I didn't. I know. Well, I caught a little bit of his show, him talking about what it was like. I may not have heard the part that you're about to talk about, but I did. I listened to his show the next day or pulled up the YouTube, the archive of it, because I just was curious if he would be doing his show the next day. And he took a private flight out that night. He was on his show. His energy level is off the charts. Whatever he's taking, I want 10 of them because he's incredible. What did he say that you were going to refer to?
So he was not expecting to get stunned by Stone Cold.
Oh, really?
That was not scripted, and he said that he appreciates the confidence that they have in him, but he was nervous about it. He was not expecting. So I didn't know if he caught that. Because to me, he sold it like The Rock used to.
Oh
perfection.
yeah,
You know,
he was excellent. He was,
yeah,
and I thought Stone Cold was great. I thought all the nostalgia stuff they did was great. I thought it was it was a really good weekend. I think it's nice I'm not a huge fan of the 2-day WrestleMania because I like everything, all roads leading to one day. But if the alternative is a 6-hour 1-day WrestleMania, I'd rather have it split into two the way that they did. I've been to those WrestleManias that are like 7 hours long, and it kills the main event. Like
yeah.
everybody's
Like,
just they're
ready to
taxed.
go home.
Yeah, exactly, Crenshaw. So it's so no, it was good. It was a fun weekend to be a wrestling fan for sure.
All right. Well, let's get while we're here. The Texans. Let's start off with we're talking about. It seems like forever. Let's get your talk on the Watson trade. So I mean, we talked before on the other podcast. Did we make out like bandits? Did we get hurt a little bit? What's your take on it?
Well, I mean, look, for what market value should be for Deshaun Watson, you didn't get market value for Deshaun. I don't know that there is a market value for a quarterback like Deshaun Watson. Like, I don't know any package of things. I don't know that there exists a reasonable set of parts where you say the sum of the parts is equal to the whole of Deshaun Watson. So I think you got to take a step back and know that you're going into a situation already because of the no trade clause, because he's demanded a trade, and obviously his legal situation is a whole nother set of encyclopedias, that you're paddling upstream to begin with. I think given the fact that when you consider you have a player who was armed with a no trade clause, he still has 22 open lawsuits against him.
And you were able to face a suspension too by the league.
He will get a suspension of some sort. I've said all along, I think he's at the very least he's going to get a suspension of a few games because of COVID violations. For real. Like all those massages that he's getting sued over all took place during the early days of COVID when the league was super vigilant with its protocols. Like my guess is he stepped over about a jillion different protocols.
Yeah, did a lot of lying about it too.
Yeah. So I think all things considered, when you take that all into account, I think Nick Caserio handled it about as well as you could, which was to say, okay, the grand jury made its ruling. Now these teams are ready to trade for Deshaun. These teams are ready to take him on with the lawsuits. Boy, there's got to be a value in us being able to get out from underneath having to worry about this anymore, whatever that is. So you take that into account. The way he sort of positioned it with these teams where he said, look, I'm not even going to talk unless it's this, 3 first-round picks was the minimum to get in the door. And he was ready to say, no, I'm not going to trade him for anything less than this. Anything less than this, we'll just pay him to sit. We'll pay him $35 million to sit this year. And Deshaun didn't want to do that. And teams obviously wanted him. So I thought he played it about as well as he could have. I think there was some, when the details got announced, I think there was some initial disappointment that there weren't, with Cleveland, like you hear that it's Cleveland, you're like, oh, here we go. 3 firsts and Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah and Denzel Ward and 2 seconds. Like you get all amped up, and then you see, okay, 3 firsts and a third and a couple fourths for Deshaun and a 6th. Okay. And I think that I've said this multiple times on my show. I think we, the media, were probably in part to blame if people were disappointed in what they got. Because once Deshaun became tradable, then there were all these reports, these very nebulous reports from the Rappaports and the Schefters of the world, like, wait till you see the packages that the Texans are getting offered for Deshaun Watson without any specificity. And so that led to us, shows like mine and others going, okay, what would a hypothetical look like with Cleveland? And we're putting all these scenarios together without any knowledge of what reality was at the time. So everybody turned what we were talking about on the radio into what reality was. And it turns out that wasn't reality. So I think Nick got 3 first-round picks. You now have a team that's got 6 first-round picks over the next 3 years. If you're asking me over under 6.5, how many first-round picks they're going to have over the next 3 years once draft night is over, I'll go over. I think they're going to wind up with another first-round pick somewhere along the way, trading back, maybe trading the 13th pick for a first-rounder next year or something, and other stuff. I think Nick is ready to deal. I know that he said that on our show. I asked him point blank one of the times he came on with us. Very first question I asked him, are you open for business with the 3rd overall pick? And he exclaimed, absolutely. So he's been of mind of trading back from the get-go with all this. So I think that's a distinct possibility. The question becomes, what is the what's the motivation of teams behind them to move up? You know, what do they think of these quarterbacks? Is there a run on wide receivers around 13 where Green Bay and Kansas City take their 2 picks maybe and package and move up? Well, I know we're getting deep into the weeds right now, but that's, you know, the bottom line is the Deshaun Watson trade. I'm past the grieving of not having Deshaun Watson anymore. I was over that a long time ago.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
You know, I'm
glad,
on to the future.
I'm glad that you brought up the grieving part of it. The way that you handled this whole Cleveland situation. First, he didn't want to go there. Now, and then they said, "Well, we'll give you $250 million." Oh, hey, did that hurt your view of him at all, or hey, it's the name of the game?
Of Deshaun, no, it didn't surprise. I was saying the whole week that they were entertaining all these deals. I brought up multiple times. I didn't think it would be Cleveland, but this is where my spidey sense was pretty good. I said, you know, ultimately, it could come down to one team just saying, we're going to pay you a bunch of money. You know, take your contract with the Texans, rip it up. Here's your new contract. Because of the nature of this trade, when it came time for these teams to compete again for Deshaun and put a better package together, normally they'd be trying to impress the Texans, right? Normally they'd be saying, oh, okay, Atlanta's offering 3 firsts and 2 seconds. We'll offer you 3 firsts, 3 seconds, and a player. That didn't matter because Deshaun could just say, I don't want to go there. The person that needed to be impressed, the supply and demand wasn't with the Texans, it was with Deshaun because he controlled the whole process. So that's my thought all along, was that ultimately the team that ends up with Deshaun will have made some sort of accommodation contractually for him, and that'll be why he picks that team. Now, where I was off base was, one, I had no idea it would be $230 million over 5 years. Like that's crazy. Number 2, I didn't think it would be Cleveland. I thought it would be Carolina. You know, Carolina so thirsty for Deshaun. Dave Tepper's a hedge fund billionaire. I think there were probably reasons why Carolina was appealing to Deshaun, non-football, obviously, because it's a bad team, but it's kind of home for him. It's sort of near Gainesville, Georgia. It's very near Clemson. Probably be as friendly a landing spot as there could be. So I thought it'd be Carolina, but I had a feeling all along it would come down to money. Do I think less of Deshaun because that was your original question, Matthew, is like, it was more about Deshaun. What do I think of him? I'm just not surprised. Like, I was expecting that to be the case. The fact that it was so exorbitant, I think if you're Roger Goodell, you've got to be embarrassed by this whole thing. You know, if you are in any sort of position of power in the league, that the highest paid player in the league by a mile, he's $80 million more guaranteed than the next highest guy who had just signed that the week before, Aaron Rodgers. That the highest paid guy in the league by a mile is someone who didn't play last year, held his team hostage with a no trade clause, has 22 civil lawsuits against him, is on the verge of getting suspended. And that's the guy that gets rewarded, and especially for what the 22 civil lawsuits are for. You know, the league has tried to, through the years, become more and more female friendly, you know, through the Susan Komen stuff and just through the marketing to women, you know, the different ways you have teams that do seminars now that, you know, football 101 for the wives and things like that. You know, there's a lot. I mean, obviously there's a ton of smart female football fans out there. The league has made a point over the last 20 years to become much more progressive in marketing to women. And now this is the guy who's the highest paid guy. And I'm not saying he did all these things, but we do know some of the things he's admitted to are stuff that the league can't be that thrilled about, just in scheduling all these massages over Instagram, admitting to consensual sex in some of these massages. So I think Roger Goodell's got to be completely embarrassed by how that whole thing played out. That's to me where the pressure point is. And all. Deshaun, I was done thinking about Deshaun. They could give him $500 million. I wouldn't care about Deshaun. Whatever. He's just using the weapons he's got available to go get paid. The league has got to be embarrassed that this is how this whole thing played out.
Yeah. That's when all this happened. Me and Crenshaw says, "All right, you know, we made an exception because you're here, but we're done. No more."
Yeah.
Okay. So so what do you think his chances with Cleveland in the next 4 years? Like realistically, are they going to go all the way, or are they going to get stopped by other AFC teams?
Well, look, the easy bet is always say he's not going to win a Super Bowl because really only one team wins a Super Bowl every year. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like so So I'm not going to sit here and go, he's going to win a Super Bowl. I think, look, if Deshaun has truly put this stuff behind him, and I don't just mean he's served his suspension, he served his time, he settled the lawsuits. I mean, like, psychologically put it behind him, because I think it's going to be a big thing with Deshaun. I think Deshaun likes being liked, and he's not liked right now. He's hated by a lot of people right now.
Even in Cleveland, a lot of Cleveland fans.
Even in Cleveland, yeah. Like, that's, I mean, he could have chosen to go to Atlanta or Carolina, and I think the reception would have been very different for him than it was, and it has been and still will be. I mean, we still got to get through training camp and the season. There's going to be picketers. There were picketers at a soccer game in Columbus over Deshaun Watson. You know,
I didn't know that.
Because Jimmy Haslam owns the Columbus Crew, the MLS team in Ohio, and there were 22 for the 22 lawsuits. There were 22 picketers at the 22nd minute of the game they were at that stood up and held signs. I forget what the sign said, but it was some sort of protest of trading for Deshaun Watson. So I think the question is, how has he put all this behind him? Is he able to focus and play football at a high level? My guess is he will be, because I think, he's functioned at a high level in pressure situations before. This is just very different, though. Look, the team it's a very good football team. The roster is very good. I think the biggest variables are what I just said with Deshaun psychologically. How capable are they of keeping this roster together now that they're paying Deshaun all this money? That's a lot of money. It's fully guaranteed. They've already pushed $45 million of it into future years in the form of a signing bonus, or I guess, 45 spread out over the 5 years. So that's going to make it harder in future years, even with the cap going up. I would be worried about that. I would be worried about just the Browns being the Browns. Like there's
that's the main thing.
There's that element, right? He didn't get traded to the Patriots. He got traded to the Browns. It's not as though they've lit the world on fire the last several years. And I think the other thing is that division is
tough,
crazy. It's tough. That could be Cleveland could be a really good football team and be 9-8 every year in that division.
Yep.
You got the team that went to the Super Bowl, Cincinnati,
and they got better.
And they got better, and their quarterback is younger than Deshaun. You got Baltimore, who's always competitive.
In the midst.
And they got decimated with injuries last year.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, by the way, their quarterback is younger than Deshaun and has won an MVP. And then you've got Pittsburgh, who finds a way every year, regardless of their quarterback play. Literally every year Tomlin's been there, at or above 500. So they're always going to be good. That's a well-run football team. So winning that division is a tall task, So you're talking about, you got to win that division, or else you're going into the playoffs every year, having to go on the road. And I think it'll be interesting to see too. How does Deshaun play in cold weather?
Yes.
Stuff like that. There's a lot of there are, for as good a player as Deshaun is, and for as good as that team is right now, we know things turn over quickly in the NFL. That team can go from being a really good roster to a very mediocre roster quickly, with a couple injuries and a couple free agents that leave that they can't sign or don't want to stay there, or whatever the case may be. It's going to be really interesting over these next few years to see how this whole thing plays out with Deshaun in Cleveland. There's no guarantees for anything in Cleveland with him right now. For a guy who's a top 5 quarterback, there are no guarantees.
Well, like a comment says, Cleveland's going to be good for a good look for him weapon wise on offense, but he won't get to reap the rewards until the 2023 season.
Well, and I think maybe of what that particular message is talking about is a suspension.
Mm-hmm.
That's the other thing. Like, what's his suspension going to be?
Yeah.
If you're a Texans fan, you should be hoping he gets destroyed with a long suspension, because that affects your draft capital moving forward.
Ben Roethlisberger, who kind of the same situation, but not the same situation. He got a 2-game suspension for it?
He got 6, and then
okay.
he appealed it, and it got bumped down to 4.
Okay.
So it wound up being 4. Yeah, it wound up
so
being 4.
That's kind of the threshold right there, 6 or 8, huh? You would think.
Yeah. Well, there's so many variables. What is the league uncovered in its investigation? There's 22 women, not one.
And it's 2022.
And it's 20. Right. That was a good.
Yeah.
It's we're in the Me Too era now, which I think is great, obviously, but probably not great for Deshaun. So there's a lot, and I'll be honest with you guys, like, I'm glad we don't have to deal with it. I know way too much about the civil lawsuit. About the way civil lawsuits. I know way more than I cared to know about civil lawsuits based on what we've had to educate ourselves on to do a radio show in this city over the last couple of years. And it's been really interesting watching our peers in Cleveland have to almost learn this stuff like with a fire hose to the face. Like we got to learn it gradually as the lawsuits trickled out over the period of about 6 weeks. Oh, here's 2 more lawsuits. Here's 3 more. Let's read these. They're having to fast get up to speed on all 22 of these lawsuits.
On the fly, huh?
And on the fly and learn how civil court works, learn what the threshold of evidence is for him to be deemed liable. What does pleading the fifth mean in civil court as opposed to in criminal court? What did the grand jury ruling actually mean for John? Like all these things, as of right now, so if he continues to want to fight these lawsuits, the 2 lawyers have already said, we're not going to do any trials while the season's going on. I don't know if you guys saw that news this week, but the 2 lawyers agreed that from August 1st through March 1st of next year, they will not try any of these cases. Well, I'm guessing they're not going to be able to cram all these trials in the court system right now, as backed up as it is. There's going to be 22 separate trials as of right now. It's not one class action suit. It's 22 separate plaintiffs. So this is a huge process. I don't think they're going to squeeze it in before the end of July. So you're talking about these lawsuits. If Deshaun is of mind to fight these lawsuits, and if they're still open come the beginning of training camp, this is going to be something that they get asked about at Cleveland training camp. Players are going to get asked about it. Deshaun himself is going to get asked about it. It's got the potential to be a big distraction.
Yeah. And not just for the Browns, but the whole NFL. So Goodell could probably just say, hey, until you get this taken care of, suspended.
Yeah,
could you not?
Well, some people have said, would they put him on the commissioner's exempt list? The sort of that purgatory that they park guys and they get paid while we figure out everything that's going on. They've never done that for somebody who's being sued in a civil court. Typically, they do that with a player who has been charged with a crime. So if the grand jury had come back and said, we are indicting Deshaun Watson, first of all, he'd still be a Texan, for one thing. They would, there's no way they would have been able to trade him. But they would probably then at that point put him on the commissioner's exempt list, and park him there. And at that point, he can't be traded if you're on the commissioner's exempt list. So it's not our problem anymore.
Yeah. Well, if he do find a way to win it, would that be worse or the same as when Gary Kubiak won the Super Bowl with Denver?
Are we comparing that? I'm not rooting for Deshaun in these cases
because I'm not neither. I'm not neither. But it's going to come up.
He's talking about Super Bowl wise. If he does
Super Bowl wise, would it be worse for us? Because when Gary and Wade Phillips won, I see what
you mean. No, I was. There was part of me that was happy for. I see where you're going with the question, like the tortured Houston Texan fan. Like, there's nothing about the Deshaun thing that tortures me anymore that has to do with the legal stuff. The legal stuff is really just now, for me, it's just news. Like, if he gets found not liable, good for him. If he gets found liable, well, then maybe there's a suspension. Yeah, like there's nothing about being a Houston sports fan where I care about Deshaun Watson's legal situation anymore. Whereas with Gary, Crenshaw, I think you're right. There was part of his winning a Super Bowl where I'm happy for Gary Kubiak because he's a nice man and a good guy. But you are like, okay, you were just our coach 2 years ago.
Yeah, you were just our coach. Him and Wade. We had him and Wade. We just had him.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess the thing is, like, Deshaun was never coming back. You know what I mean? Like, Deshaun, what happens with him legally now, the only effect it has is, does it affect his suspension with the league? That's it. That's the only reason I care about it. And if he did these things, and obviously I want him to be found liable. I think that's the thing that gets lost in this sometimes. It's natural on a podcast like this, on a show like mine. What gets lost is, like, there are 22 women that are on the other end of this thing that are actual human beings, So, like, the law, that's why comparing anything to these lawsuits is very sloppy for me, because it's, there's a human element to it that you hope whatever justice is, and justice could be Deshaun didn't do these things and he shouldn't be found liable. If that's the truth, then awesome. Then I hope that's what happens. But again, I'm glad it's not our problem anymore.
Exactly.
Before we move on to the next part of the podcast, we got a comment. What do you think happens with Baker?
I don't know, man. I don't know that Baker's doing himself any favors by getting all emo on these podcasts like he did today and whatnot. I feel like, what's he doing? Is he trying to to not get traded? I can't tell. Look, he's not going to be in Cleveland. We know that. They're not just going to cut him because he does have value. It's weird because the musical chairs, for as many teams that have quarterback issues, I do think that most of these teams are married to a quarterback right now. Some of them are in dysfunctional marriages, but they're married to a quarterback. The Jets are in a dysfunctional marriage with Zach Wilson. They are married for the season, though. He will be their starting quarterback. I would say there's probably 10 teams like that there's some degree of trepidation or dysfunction with their quarterback. The only teams that are left that you could say are still not sure about their starting quarterback this coming season are Carolina, and both sides have said they don't, Baker and Carolina have both said we don't want to get married. Seattle, which I think is the favorite to probably land Baker. And then I would say Pittsburgh probably hasn't settled on a starter yet. I know they signed Trubisky, but the Browns aren't going to trade him to the Steelers.
Yeah,
they're not going to trade him in the division like that. So it'll be fun if they did. That would be cool. That's the only thing that the AFC North needs now is Baker to go to Pittsburgh, and it would be the most must-watch division with Deshaun in there now and everything, and Joe Burrow and Lamar. So I don't think he's on Cleveland. If I had to guess, I would say Seattle. I think Baker would be well served to go be a backup somewhere behind a high-level quarterback for a year. For him to go back up Tom Brady for a year, I think would do wonders for his career. To observe Tom Brady, he would be an upgrade over Blaine Gabbert. I think if Cleveland were willing to pick up part of the salary, his salary is $18 million. Let's say Cleveland splits it, says, okay, Tampa, you pay $9 and we'll pay $9. And they, and Tampa gives them a 4th round pick or something like that. Blaine Gabbert sucks. That's their backup quarterback right now. Say what you will about Baker, he's light years better than Blaine Gabbert. I think that'd be a worthwhile investment for the Bucs. And I think that it would be a worthwhile investment in terms of career investment for Baker Mayfield. Look, if Seattle wants to trade for him, then go there because you're going to start and you're going to have Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf. Baker goes there, all of a sudden he's got weapons. He's probably got better weapons than he's had the last couple of years in Cleveland on the outside for sure. Those are Lockett and Metcalf are 2 of the top 20 receivers in the league. And they brought Rashad Penny back too. So go there. But if Seattle's if Pete Carroll's no, we're going to draft somebody, or we like Drew Lock, whatever. I think a backup situation behind a real capable vet, could make a lot of sense for Baker. The Tampa thing makes a lot of sense to me there. You go hang near Brady. It's been good for other quarterbacks. You get that Brady rub. You hanging out with Byron Leftwich, who's one of the brighter young offensive minds in football. So something like that. If you're asking me to handicap it, I'll say Seattle's the favorite, but I think the best thing for Baker might be something like Tampa Bay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, most definitely. That sounds logic, at the most part. So the next part, free agency. So what do you rate the free agency as a whole? If you had to grade it
for the Texans, I would say, given where they are, if they were trying to win the division, I would say a D-. But it's the highest ticket guy they signed was Malik Collins. They brought him back for $8.5 million a year. I can't think of a player they gave more to per year than Malik Collins in this free agency go around. So, and by far, he was twice as much. They signed Steven Nelson today for 2 years, $10 million, and you're like, whoa, slow down, Nick. So I would say a C. Just given where they are, I wasn't expecting them to do much. I've been saying all along that free agency this year is going to look a lot like free agency did last year. Now, little did I know it would literally look like it, the same exact people involved in all these. They're bringing the band back together. Certainly lends itself to plenty of jokes. But a C. It doesn't blow me away, but I totally understand what they're doing.
Right.
They're in a situation. It's hard to give them an A because they're probably going to win 4 games next year.
That's kind of how we've been saying too. We gave it. Well, I gave it a B- because you got Deshaun Watson away. in free agent. I know it's not part of free agency, but you
Yeah.
got rid of that, and that's a big boost to your
Yeah.
team. And
Yeah.
then, like you said, Casario doesn't want to spend money, which is great. So why not get these 1-year deals to kind of make it,
Yeah.
prove it. Gruger Hill was fantastic last year. Malik Collins. So
Yeah.
Mhm.
He doesn't want to spend money this year, but he has hinted that he'll spend money, when the time is right. The time's definitely not right now. I almost feel bad giving him a C because the question becomes, okay, what did you want him to like? If someone gave me a C in a class, I'd be like, okay, what could I have done better to get an A?
right.
And if the
Okay.
answer to Nick is nothing, then it's a bad class. You know what I mean? Like if
Yeah.
there's nothing you can do to get an A, then it's a bad. Then why did I take this course if I can't get an A? So if I'm giving him a C, then what did I expect him to do? And if the answer is I expected him to do exactly what he did, then I guess I need to give a better grade than a C. I guess, I think there's still holes on this roster that I would have liked to have seen maybe filled with something different. Like I would like a tight end. Like, am I cool with them just rolling with Brevin Jordan and Anthony Auclair? Like, there had to be a tight end out there that you could have gotten. It's maybe it's because there's not that many in the draft this year. So that's still a need position to me for them. Everything's a need position for them, but you know what I mean? Like, I look at it like that's a position where they're still barren right now, Until today, I would have said cornerback, same thing, but they signed Steven Nelson. So, okay, so that's a B- for that particular position group. You signed a guy who started a bunch of games on some decent teams the last few years. Okay, for a moderate wage, $5 million a year. That's a moderate wage for corners in the NFL. So I think he did fine. Like we're just at the beginning of the part where I'm truly starting to judge Nick Caserio. Like pretty much his whole tenure so far, the 15 months he's been here, has been cleaning up just a catastrophic mess from the previous regime, which is going to carry into this year. I mean, they're still carrying $50 million in dead money on the
Dead
cap
money. Mm-hmm.
through the Watson trade and through cutting Zach Cunningham and cutting Whitney Merciless and trading Bradley Roby and paying his salary and all that stuff. So I think he did fine. There's nothing that gets you super excited in this free agency class, but I think he did the right things. I think he's, for where this team is right now, I totally understand his MO.
So now Davis Mills is our starter. Lovie Smith says that he's impressed with his improvements. I know last time me and you talked, we were talking about the quarterback watch of 2022. So where's your take on? Are you excited to see Davis, or are you one of these Texans fans? He's not worth it. Don't give him a shot.
Well, no, I'm definitely not that, Matthew. I'm definitely not like.
You'd be
definitely
surprised,
not
their son. These fans are.
Oh
Man,
no, I hear it all. Trust me. Like I know there's all sorts of opinions out there about Davis Mills. No, look. I am one of those fans that gets excited every year for football season. I am more my default switch is set more to, okay, this is who we have, then let's find some reasons to get excited about it. He was a 67th overall pick in the draft as a rookie on a team with no running game and very few weapons last year, and statistically played better than every other rookie quarterback except for Mac Jones. And I think if you put him on the Patriots and Mac Jones on the Texans, I think the Patriots would have made the playoffs with Davis Mills as their quarterback.
Yes.
They really do. So they're playing with house money with Davis Mills right now. So what the hell? Like what is sacrificed by letting him roll this year as the starter? Nothing. In fact, if you're of the mind that this quarterback class in this draft is not very good, which most experts comparatively say, boy, I mean, there may be some guys that get drafted kind of high, but they're all reaches. There's no Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson. Nobody was complaining about any of those guys. People thought Justin Fields slipped to 11, and so that was a better class last year coming in. This is not thought to be nearly that class. At the very least, let's pretend Davis Mills just sucks this year. Like whatever he was the first 6 games last year, that turns out that's what he was. He's not good. The 5 games at the end was a mirage. At the very least, he will have prevented you from reaching on one of these quarterbacks this year. In all likelihood, right? Like if he had sucked, if he was terrible all last year, if the last 5 games looked like the first 6, and he was just a train wreck, you would be in the market for a quarterback right now.
Yep, at number 3.
At number 3, we would be the ones on this podcast. This is what we would be talking about right now, guys. Boy, I just can't get out of my head that throw that Malik Willis made at his pro day when he was rolling to his left and he dropped a dime to a receiver that was running against nobody. So we would be doing that right now, and we would be trying to talk ourselves into Malik Willis or Kenny Pickett, or we would be trying to figure out any way we can to move out of 3 so we can just draft Matt Corral a little bit later. Or, we'd be talking about which quarterback are we going to take with the 13th pick that we got in the Watson trade. Maybe we use 3 on it. That's what we'd be talking about. We'd say maybe use, unless we really feel good about Malik Willis, but you use 3 on Ekwonu, and then you got your guy to protect Matt Corral, who you're taking with the 13th pick. That kind of stuff. We would be talking about that.
You're
if
right.
It turns out,
that's true.
If the experts are right about this quarterback class, at the very least, Davis Mills' rookie year will have prevented us from reaching on one of them. And if he sucks, well, now you're desperate for a quarterback, but it's in a year where you actually have Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud, and generally speaking, it's thought to be a better overall quarterback class than this one. And if Davis Mills sucks, you're probably picking somewhere where you can get one of those guys. At the very least, you're sitting on extra draft capital to maneuver around and get one of those guys. Because the other teams that have multiple first-round picks next year, I think Detroit does. They're going to be bad. The other ones all might be too average to be in position to deploy. Like, I think Philly's got multiple picks. I think Miami's got multiple picks. And I'm missing – and Seattle's got multiple picks. Seattle has a chance of being pretty bad. But, like, Miami and Philadelphia, they're both loading up with picks because they think Hurts and Tua might not be the guy. The problem is they might just be good enough to win 8 or 9 games. And there are going to be teams ahead of you that need quarterbacks. So it's a long answer to the Davis Mills question. But I'm cool with rolling with Mills for a year. I'm excited to see what he can do because that's my general demeanor going into the year. Is I tend to be more positive, hopeful about things until I'm shown evidence not to be hopeful, which happened last year by about the midway through week 2 game with David Culley as the head coach. But I'm cool with rolling with Mills, and at the very least, I think he's prevented Nick Caserio from really having to think hard about making what could be a catastrophic mistake drafting one of these quarterbacks.
What do Mills have to do this year to keep him 2023?
I would say, to prevent you from even discussing a quarterback, you got to make the playoffs. You got to be over 500. You got to win 9 games to prevent you from even discussing it. It's not even a question. We're rolling with Mills. You got to go. You got to go 9 and 8. To anything where you're I'll call it 8 and 9 and 9 and 8 are about the same thing. So anything 7 and 10 or lower, 7 and 10 or lower means you're picking in the top 12. It means you're one of the 12 worst teams in football. So you got to at least be discussing it if you're a bad football team. Now, I'll caveat it with this, Crenshaw, is if the reason why you're 6 and 11, let's say, is because of the defense, and Mills has actually looked like a capable field general for you at quarterback, then that does change things for me a little bit. If he has a Matt Schaub 2010 kind of year, remember Matt Schaub throws for 4,300 yards. He's running an offense that had Arian Foster. Now he had Arian Foster running for 1,600 yards that year. But stay with me on the analogy. If he has that type of year where you look at him and go, boy, Davis Mills really progressed. He's one of the 5 or 6 best quarterbacks in the AFC. Which, think about who he'd have to be ahead of to be saying that about him. But this defense was so awful that he's losing shootouts. He's losing 35-31, things like that on a weekly basis. Yeah, and that changes things a little bit. So I don't know. It's really hard for me to
because we have
these are the cutoff points. He must throw for this many yards. He can very easily throw for 3,200 yards, and I feel like he could be the guy if he's doing the right things to win games. And he's not making crucial turnovers and things like that. I guess what I would say is this is not a great answer, but I think this is just the truth. What was it that politician one time that said, I don't know the definition of pornography, but I know it when I see it, that kind of thing. I think it's I don't know what Davis Mills necessarily if you're in that gray area, if they're 2 and 15, then you got to look for a quarterback.
Yeah,
if they're in the playoffs, you're not looking for a quarterback. Anything in between, is pornography. I'll know it when I see it. Like anything that's in between, like just out and out failure or getting to the postseason, then it just comes down to, man, we need to do this podcast again and after week 18 and just what did we just see, and go through the nuances of the season. I would say the biggest thing though would be like command. Forget about stats and forget about being 9-8 versus 6-10. Like as long as they're not bottoming out, I would just say, how's the decision making? How's the command? How does the team feel about his leadership? Things like that. Do you feel like everything's kind of upward take? Are you watching this guy going, this guy's a starting quarterback in the league?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this year coming up is a great time to do that because our strength of schedule is ridiculous. I think it's like top 10, top 15.
Yeah. I was out to lunch with a friend today who is adamant that he thinks that they're going to be, that you should take the over on their win total. I know you guys have seen their win totals like in Vegas.
4.5.
4.5. Yeah, 4.5.
Yeah.
He's adamant you should take the over. He thinks they're going to definitely win more than 4.5 games. He gave reasons why, and there were good reasons. The second year for a lot of these guys in the systems. Lovie Smith and Pep Hamilton are huge upgrades over David Culley and Tim Kelly. Totally true. But then we started going through who the opponents are. Okay, so you're saying all these things anecdotally about this team that I agree with. And they won 4 games last year with all this just crap in place. But let's go through it. And we started going through it, and we're like, okay, it is going to be hard to find 5 wins for this team, because they, in the division, Tennessee and Indianapolis got better with Matt Ryan. Tennessee's Tennessee. I mean, I think they're the same team they were last year. I think Jacksonville's going to be better, right, without Urban Meyer.
Okay.
And Trevor Lawrence in year 2. So the division, theoretically, the division outside of the Texans, I think either is the same or both teams got slightly better. You play the AFC West, you will be at least a touchdown underdog to all of those teams. All 4 of them. You play the NFC East. So we're up to 10 games already, the 6 division games and the 4 AFC West games. I think we're looking at like 2 wins in the division, no wins against the AFC West. Against the NFC East, you're playing at Dallas. That's a loss. You're playing at the Giants. That's winnable. But I'd rather play them at home because then I feel like, well, that could be a guaranteed win almost. Not a guaranteed win, but that could be one. You might be favored against the Giants at home. And then you play Washington and Philadelphia both at home. Maybe there's 1 win in there against that division, so you're up to 3-4 wins. So you got 3 games left. You're playing Cleveland at home. Well, if Deshaun's playing, you ain't winning that game. You play Miami on the road. Well, they just traded for Tyreek Hill. Like, they just sauced the hell up of their team, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you play Chicago. In Chicago, boy, what if they plunk that thing down in November or December,
Yeah.
That'll be the other part. When the schedule comes out, they play these teams. They play a lot of road games that if it's at a certain time of year,
The weather's
we
bad.
don't know what it is. Yeah, weather could be bad. So it's I think it's not easy to find 5 wins for this team right now. It's a hard schedule, man. It's a hard schedule.
Very hard.
The AFC is hard.
Yeah.
Like the AFC is ridiculous.
It is. It got way better. Way better.
Yeah.
The AFC West alone is probably
Yeah.
all top 5 teams. I mean, it's just ridiculous how good that whole division got.
I would say you had 2 playoff teams in that division, Kansas City and Las Vegas. I think they're both. I know Kansas City traded Tyreek Hill. It's still a good football team. Obviously, you got Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
The Raiders got better.
Well, yeah.
And they might be. I could see a scenario where they're 3rd and 4th in that division.
Yeah.
Like those are the 2 teams that made the playoffs. I could easily see the Chargers and the Broncos making the playoffs out of that division now with Russell Wilson and the Chargers trading for Khalil Mack and signing J.C. Jackson on the back end, and it's that's like the SEC West, man.
Yeah.
Well, Sean, real quick before we head out, this one player you want to stay away from the draft and one player we must get in the draft. Who is it?
Okay. Yeah. I would say as far as stay away from is an interesting one. This draft is so balanced at the areas where the Texans are drafting right now. I was talking about this with Landry tonight. I don't know that I've ever seen a draft where there are so many guys in the upper part of the first round, call it the first half of the first round in mock drafts, so the upper half, the top 15 to 17 players in the draft.
Right.
I don't know that I've ever seen that many guys that are considered top 15 players, where in some mock drafts they're going 2, and in other ones they're going 13.
Yeah.
Like Trayvon Walker, Kyle Hamilton, Charles Cross, Kayvon Thibodeau, both of the cornerbacks, Gardner and Stingley. If I thought this through, I'd probably think of Malik Willis. There's so many guys that are, the window is just so huge right now. Like they could go to Detroit, or they could fall to the Texans at 13. So that I lead in with that because there's not any players I really hate in this draft. I'm not wild about them drafting an offensive lineman at 3. I'll say that. That'll be my answer to the who do you want them to stay away from. And it's not because I think Evan Neal or Ike Ekwonu or Charles Cross are bad football players. I think they're all really good football players. There's a few reasons why I'd rather not see them go offensive line with the 3rd pick. One, if there is a position group on this team where they're pot committed with a lot of resources right now, it is the offensive line. I'm not wild about drafting a guy to put him at guard for 2 years when he's being drafted in a spot where you draft a left tackle. But there's that chance that they keep Howard and Tunsil that you're drafting a guy, say Ekwonu, that's a guard for you. And then if Tunsil or one of them leaves, now you're moving him to tackle in year 3. So you're 2 years into his rookie deal already. You don't know what you have in the position that you're really drafting him for. That's number 2. Number 3, of all the position groups, the one position group, and Seth says this a lot on our show, the one position group where you just need guys to be you just need average guys, and you can have an elite position group if they're all working in sync and they're well coached, is offensive line. You don't need elite offensive linemen to have an elite offensive line. I don't know that you can say that about any other position group. If you're going to have elite receivers, you need an elite receiver. If you're going to have an elite receiving core, you got to have an elite receiver in there somewhere. If you're going to have an elite secondary, you better have a shutdown corner or a ball hawk safety or both. If you're going to have elite linebackers, you better have somebody busting ass off the edge on the quarterback every play. Offensive line's not like that. So why would I use the 3rd overall pick on a position where, generally speaking, if I just go find some lunch pail guys, I can be very, very good there when I need everything? We need everything.
Yeah, you just need better coaching at that position. Just better coaching.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. So, and then the last part about why I would stay away from offensive line is just the 25% of me that is invested in this as a fan, which is offensive line are boring to pick with the 3rd overall pick. I don't, like when they go and they announce Ekwonu and then they start playing all the highlights. I'm like, oh, awesome block.
Really look, there's another one.
Really cool pull right there, really. And I don't want to diminish what they do. I mean, look, they have a hard job. It's just not something that resonates with the average fan. The average fan can get into Kyle Hamilton making a beeline from one hash all the way across the field to intercept the ball against Florida State. The average fan can watch Chris Olave, and I'm not saying draft Olave with the 3rd pick. I'm just making a point about positions.
Right.
Yeah.
Can watch catches and go, oh man, we get that guy? Okay, cool. Watch Aiden Hutchinson ruin a quarterback. Like, those are all things. So that's down the list of reasons why. I think there's practical football reasons to stay away from an offensive lineman that are valid. But there is part of me that's just a fan also. And I'm like, okay, it's kind of boring, with the 3rd overall pick when you got all this other stuff available that you need and you draft. So there's that. As far as a player I would like to come away with, I've been it's maybe part of it's Notre Dame bias. I've always been a huge Kyle Hamilton fan. Hamilton. From the time he set foot on campus there, I mean, I've watched every snap of his college career because that's my team. But he's so big and rangy and freaky, and I just think he avails you to doing so many things defensively with where you can line him up, in the covering slot. You can put him in the box. He's big, for a guy he's not super, obviously his straight line speed is what's in question right now because of his 40 time. I've watched him enough to go, okay, I don't think speed's an issue with Kyle Hamilton. Like, I've watched him play. He's not slow. But he's big. Like, he's long arms and just big and strong, and he can hit. So he's somebody who at 3, I would be totally cool with them taking him. Now I'm seeing mock drafts where he's still sitting there at 13. Like if he were sitting there at 13, if he were sitting there at 13 and they didn't take him, I would be really bummed out about that. I even tried to, when we had Nick on our show last time, and we're going to have him on again sometime in the next week or two before the draft. He's already told me he's going to come on. But I asked him specifically about Hamilton, and he kind of clammed up and didn't say anything. Like he didn't, he just kind of paused and didn't say anything when I was asking him specifically about Hamilton. And I actually got a text from a couple people who who work in the building over there, and they said, "Oh, he was silent when you asked about Hamilton. I think that's a tell who he likes. He likes Hamilton." As total speculation, obviously. They just found it funny to be, that he was keeping a poker face when I asked about Kyle Hamilton. But we were playing on the Twitter Spaces I was on before I came on with you guys. Landry and I were kind of playing a little game because he and I are both fans of Hamilton, Stingley, and Sauce Gardner, those 3 DBs. So we were trying to play the game where, okay, what would have to happen for at least one of them to be there at 13? Just one of them. So the answer mathematically is, okay, well, you need 10 other guys who you feel like could get picked before 13. If you can name 10 other guys that you feel like are pretty high probability to get picked before 13, that leaves at least one's going to be left because, theoretically 2 of them could go, but, you get the 13, 10 plus the 2 and then the 1. And we tried to play that game, and we came up with, we feel like probably like a 50-50 chance it could play out that way. Like, not a great chance, but, we started, filling in the blanks. Like, okay, Hutchinson for sure, Trayvon Walker for sure, that's 2. We just need to find 10 guys. If we can find 10, then we know that at least one of those DBs will still be there at 13. So we were like, okay, Hutchinson and Walker and Thibodeau, they're probably all going in the top 12. At least 2 offensive linemen, probably need 3. Probably need Cross to sneak up there to go with Neal and Iquanu. That's 6. Now we need 4 more. Okay, a quarterback. What about 2 quarterbacks? Okay, now we're up to 8. So I don't know if 2 quarterbacks are going to be in there, but let's play the game here. And then after that, then you figure a wide receiver, maybe Garrett Wilson or Drake London or somebody like that. So we had a hard time coming up with 10 surefire guys. You need some things to break your way, but I would love for one of those DBs, Hamilton preferably, but if Sauce Gardner or Derek Stingley happen to fall to 13, that's what I want. It's hard, to answer, who do you absolutely want to come away with at 3? I guess I want Hutchinson to fall to 3, He's the one guy that doesn't have a window of, hey, he could go 2 and he could go 18. He's the one guy, he's going 1, 2, or 3. He ain't getting out of the top 3, Aiden Hutchinson. So, but I think more about the 13th pick when I think of okay, who do I want to come? Because at 3, you can have almost anybody. 13, you need stuff to happen.
Right.
You need certain things to fall your way. So, yeah.
Right. Yeah, I've seen a lot of them where we get Sauce at 3 and then Kyle Hamilton falls at. And you might be right. This wide receiver core is so special this year in this draft.
Yeah.
There might be teams that,
it's deep.
Yeah, they might jump.
It's deep. It's deep. I'm starting to talk myself into a slot receiver with one of those 3rd-round picks, like the Calvin Austin kid out of Memphis,
mm-hmm.
Who just blew up the combine, but he's like a big run after
John
catch
Metchie.
guy. What's that?
I say John Metchie out of Alabama.
Yeah, Metchie. Yeah, Metchie. He's thought to be in that 3rd-round range. So it's going to be exciting, man. 7 of the top 108. That's what the Texans have.
I know all of us Texan fans are tired of the last name Watson, but I wouldn't mind Christian Watson.
Christian Watson. Yeah. Yep.
But Sean, man, thanks for coming on. It's always a blast to have you on
man.
here.
Thank you.
Appreciate
when
you
the
guys.
draft's over, we're gonna have you come back on and recap it with us.
You know where to find me.
Well, tell us where we can find you on social media. That way we can follow.
Yeah. Yep. Twitter at Sean T. Pendergast is where I do most of my social media-ing. Is on Twitter, but I'm on Instagram, Sean.Pendergast. I'm on Facebook. And then obviously the show 6 to 10 a.m. on Sports Radio 610 every day, Monday through Friday. And then my national show is on CBS sports radio on Sundays, 1 to 5 p.m. So Sunday afternoons. Usually runs on Sports Radio 610 unless the NCAA tournament or the Super Bowl is going on or something like that. Then I get covered up. But you can listen to all of it on the Odyssey app. The app for your phone.
Yeah.
AUDACY, and it's a cool little app, and you can rewind and listen. And podcasts are all up on there and everything else. And then obviously once the season starts, I'll be doing pregame and postgame for the Texans on game day. So I stay busy.
Hey, ain't nothing wrong with that.
Appreciate you giving us some time coming on the podcast again.
Thanks for having me, guys. Keep up the great work, and let's get some players.
That's right. Thank you.
Yes.
All right,
fellas.
All right.
Have a good
All
one.
right. Thank you. Bye.
Appreciate you.
And as always, you can catch myself at A1 Day One Texans. Crenshaw, tell the folks where you can find your amazing Twitter information.
Fifth Ward Crenshaw, everywhere.
And then, of course, you follow the podcast at Texans Fan Battle. Guys, next week is the last week to enter your chance. We already got like over 100 entries. Gas is getting up. Food's getting up. I mean, prices are going through the roof. So if you want a chance to win a $200 gift card to Amazon where you buy anything, all you got to do is like our podcast, share it, follow YouTube. Just try to get our name out there so we get bigger.
And when you go announce the winner?
Next Wednesday on the 20th.
Next Wednesday. All right. Next Wednesday, y'all.
Hopefully, we don't have a lot of people that's too high to function on the 20th. So, they can pay attention to what's happening. But then until then, guys, Chris, I got anything?
No, I don't got nothing, man. Just ready for the draft, man. So we could all the speculating, we could finally see what's gonna happen.
Right. Well, guys, till then, y'all have a blessed week, and we'll see you next Wednesday.
All righty. Peace.
Peace.